We're going to pin the hood together, matching the center back seam, and we're going to zigzag along this opening, and that's just to keep this all together. Open up your back seams, pin that. And the reason why we want to open it up is to reduce the bulk. Matching up everything. And we're going to use a 5C3, which is a wide zigzag. And you want to go right so it's almost overcasting, so it's kind of coming off of it. And the best way to do that is to line up the center of the presser foot with the edge of your material. The only job that we're doing right now is to hold the ends of the hood together. Again, I would put your needle in the down position. So I missed a little bit here. I can go over that just to make sure that that gets closed up. But you can see that it's nice and close to the edge. Next step says to overlap the front two edges of the hood only halfway to the top stitching. So here are the front two edges of my hood. So if I have my hood up like this, I'm going to overlap these two edges. And again, that's to hold it in place. So I'm just going to overlap halfway to the top stitching. So just halfway to halfway. And again, I'm just going to zigzag that so that when we put the hood in, it's going to have this nice opening like that. And again, just zigzag right along the edge, along the bottom to hold that together. Just that much. Now we're going to put the hood into our sweatshirt. So we're going to go back to our front and our back that we've sewn together. And what we need to do now is we need to turn it inside out, which it already is. And we need to find the center front and the center back of the sweatshirt. So here's the front, here's the back. We want to know directly where's the center in the front and where's the center in the back. So the best way to do that is to line up your shoulder seams, make sure those are perfectly lined up. And this allows you then to have the center fold. Mark on the wrong side, not on the right side, because we don't want to leave a chalk mark. And then come in here and just mark it. So now I know exactly where my center back and my center front is. When you look at your hood, your center back is the seam that we've placed on the back of the hood, and your center front is right in the middle along here. You have two notches, and those notches are going to line up with your side seam on either side. So now we need to pin the hood into the sweatshirt, lining up our neck edges with the part that we have zigzagged. So you're going to take your hood, you're going to place it upside down like this into the sweatshirt. So the only thing you should be seeing are your zigzagged edge and your cut edge. I'm going to line up my center front to my center front of my hood. And I'm going to line up my center back to my center back here. Then I'm going to line up my notch, make sure those seams are open to my side seam. And then I'm going to pin in between. This is where you're going to want to stretch your hood a little bit. My hood's a bit small because my material doesn't stretch very well. So we've done the matching. Now it says to take off the extension plates, and you're going to baste stitch along the outside first. And the reason is we want to make sure we're not going to get any tucks and that we're catching everything. So you're going to set it to a 0.5, which is a very narrow zigzag, a C, and a 4. I like to start at the back and work my way around, or at the front. When you come to the shoulder seam, make sure you are kind of pulling your fabric out of the way so it's not going to create a tuck in it. And then just keep pulling and stretching it so that it fits. I kind of like to go from behind and in the front to give it a nice stretch if you need to stretch it. Okay, any type that there is sort of a fold here, just spread that material out. And again, having your needle in the down position definitely helps with this. So now I've got my base stitch. Okay. I'm going to turn it around to the good side and I'm going to inspect. And here I can see a tiny little tuck, but I want to make sure there's nothing obvious and that when I pull it apart that everything is in order and it looks pretty good. Now I can go over it with my regular stitching, okay, which is your very narrow zigzag, but I'm going to decrease the stitch length to a 2.5. If there's a major tuck or anything like that, you're going to open it up and you're going to redo it. I'm not going to worry about that tiny little one in the back. So there I have it there. And now the next part is optional. And that's to do a top stitch along here. And the reason why you'd want to do a top stitch is just to keep your seam allowance pointing downward. But again, you don't have to. If you do top stitch, you always want to start in an inconspicuous area. So an area that people won't see. And the best part is right at the back, because generally our hood is going to be down and it's going to hide anything like that. So I'm going to top stitch it. I'm going to use the edge of the presser foot as my guide right along the seam, and I'm going to use a straight stitch. So a 5, a 3, And make sure that your seam is always pointing down, your seam allowance. So I put my hand inside and I'm pushing my seam allowance down. And again, I'm just giving just a little bit of a tug. So I really use my fingers to help guide and push. Just be careful that you're not stitching your finger with your needle. So always being aware where your fingers are in relation to that needle. So I'm coming up to the end. I want to make sure that I'm going to join directly over top of where I started and then do a back stitch.